And hello there, people of the world, people of the known universe. As always, welcome to my channel, Sir Koolzalot. You're cool, I'm cool, we are definitely all super cool. So today I have compiled a video of a product that is just starting to appear at various online retailers. The name of this product is, interestingly enough, a little bit elusive, but there are some shops out there that are selling it. I saw ELDERACARE, AUMETE. The unit itself has a safety logo written on the side. In any case, here's what it looks like, and it caught my attention as being quite interesting and a little bit up and coming, so I figured I would add this to my list of product tests and reviews. A little side note, it's been a while since my last video. Actually, I have been very busy behind the scenes. I have been working on importing some very cool consignments, and I've completed the testing for all of that. That included a lot of about 10 X6 coolers, as you know, a lot of about 16 Chi, and a lot of about 12 X1 coolers. So I will share all the testing for that soon. And then just a heads up, over the next few weeks, actually I've got some really cool trips planned. I've got a road trip in California, I have another business trip to Switzerland, and then excitingly I have a holiday in Italy that includes a nearly 8 hours of train journeying. And so I'm going to use all of those opportunities to record some medicine cooler data. So let's jump into the show with this one, and let me show you what I got. So as always, I do have disclaimers. All of the data that I'm presenting here is my own. I am on a quest to find the best medicine travel coolers that are out there for my travel needs. And so, as always, do your research, take your time, figure out what is the best products for your personal needs. This is my journey, and I'm sharing it with you as I take it. So yeah, let's keep on going. So this is the star of the show for today. As I said, it has a big kind of safety logo on the side. Not sure exactly why they've chosen that, but there it is. And there's a white version and a sort of a grey off black kind of version. It has an onboard battery, it has a carrier bag system, and the cooling engine is located at the base of the unit. Now, notoriously, all of the products that I've tested where the cooling unit is at the base, those tend to have cooling challenges and also temperature gradient challenges. They usually tend to struggle being able to keep the upper section of the unit cooler. So it'll be interesting to see if they've resolved some of these technical design issues with this product. Let's keep on going. So here's just a flash of some of the marketing material that I saw online. It's showcasing capacity size, it's showcasing that it can cool to the refrigerated temperature in 15 minutes. It has this control panel that allows real-time monitoring and temperature setting, and then it comes with what looks like quite a cool carrier bag system that's specifically designed for this unit. So here's the price points that I came across. I purchased my test unit from Amazon. It came within about a day, so pretty quick. There were some different stores that were selling it. One unit was hovering in the $170 range with an interesting coupon. Another unit was hovering in the $115 range, but it seemed like it had a base kind of package. You could upgrade that to an extra battery. There was also a couple of other coupons that were flying around. Because this was testing, I went with the base unit there, costing $115.99. A fair price point for this product. I don't know if that's good value or not yet, but we'll soon find out. So some other interesting advertisement material. I saw that it was claiming that it was ultra quiet with a 23 decibel rating there by your bedside. It could, the battery life was 8 hours. The battery that came with it was rated at 20,000 milliamp hours, so that's quite a big battery. It packs a punch, I guess, or it could. It had this interesting, unusual comment here that after the 8 hours of battery, you got about 1 extra hour of passive temperature hold after the power is off. That's intriguing. Normally, USB coolers will actually warm up to room temperature very quickly, because one of their downfalls is they are not fully sort of thermally insulated like a thermos flask, and that has an actual lid. The Peltier plate, the area where the heat is transferred from sort of hot to cold or cold to hot, depending on how you view that thermal plate will radiate the cold or the heat very quickly. That area is not insulated, and so when the power is off, typically a USB cooler will quickly rise back up to room temperature because it's not a fully insulated system, if that makes sense. So the fact that it says it takes an hour here is quite interesting. Maybe they've got some tricks there. Very suspicious at this point. And then the usual, hey, TSA approved. Well, as always, TSA does not approve products for travel, and never has, never will. So that may be just a misstatement or a lost in translation, but certainly you could say it's TSA compliant. Perhaps most medicine transportation systems are allowed by TSA per their rule. So just a note on that. All right, let's keep on going. And so now just let's sort of do a little bit of a sort of a product tour. So got the usual top view here. So here you can see the charger system that came with it. It was a 5-volt charger that had 2 ports. So it had, you can kind of see them there. So two USB ports. Now one was intended for either the battery pack or the actual unit itself. In the system that I got, there was only one battery, so you could, I guess, essentially just plug it in and try and keep the battery and the unit charged together. That seemed to be one of the possible pathways. So now you can see how that battery fits in the little battery module that's inside the unit. I am noting there that battery is a 20,000 milliamp hour battery, or it's claimed to be, and its close proximity to the cooling chamber is interesting. Noteworthy. Let's sort of keep going with the video. So here you can now see the control panel. The control panel has 4 buttons. The 2 top ones are just plus and minus. You can navigate back and forth on the temperature setting. The one to the lower left is to activate the heating mode, and then a little sort of reddish flame icon pops up, and then the one on sorry, I should have said the one on the left is the heating mode, and then the one on the right is the cooling mode. The lower right is the cooling mode. So the panel's not overly complicated. The one thing I did notice here is the panel's very touch sensitive, so it if you actually are holding that panel, it will just continuously scroll through the different temperatures. It's not kind of a tap by tap kind of setup. It's sort of a touch sensitive, will continue to scroll. So that may or may not be noteworthy for when you're transporting this, or you're on a live trip and you perhaps accidentally nudge the panel, or it gets accidentally touched. You might inadvertently reset or change the temperature setting. Just a heads up, I did do some walk testing with this later on. Not video shown here, and actually, interestingly enough, I inadvertently switched the unit off because I'd somehow depressed the power on, power off mode button, and so when I went to look at it, it was actually off and was starting to warm up, and I was like, "Ooh, no, that's not good." So that's going to be a ding in this review. There is an in the display. You can also see there's a little sort of a battery gauge there that tells you how much the battery is charged. It has 4 bars, so 25, 50, 75, and 100%. When it gets to the lower bars, it does bleep to sort of let you know or warn you. But when you actually reach the 0 bar, there's no additional warning or bleep. It will just shut off. So that was quite interesting to see that. All right, let's keep on going. So now, just as always, let's take a look at the capacity of this unit. So it's not a very big container. Right off the bat, you can't fit the Z-bound pens in there, or pens that have the triangle base. The container's too small for that, unfortunately. So, but here I've got some demo pens, so I can I'm taking the caps off there just so you can get a rough idea of the geometry. But the caution here is obviously do not remove those caps until you're actually about to use your medicine, because those caps are critical to the sterility barrier that is essentially protecting the needle inside that auto-injector from the environment, and it's keeping it sterile, and so you don't want to remove that until you're actually ready to go. Here you can see some Wegovy pens, so obviously those are much more compact. You can get 4-ish in there. It was a little bit of a wrestle because the Wegovy pens do have these little outdents at the on the upper side to prevent them from rolling, and so they're not perfect circles. But if you shimmy 3 in the downward position and 1 in the upward position, you can sort of get 4 pens in there. But a cautionary note here is, if you do try to jam pens in, be very careful not to inadvertently activate them or pull the caps off and stuff as you're trying to remove them. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. Here are some EpiPens, so you can get 2. Those are usually pretty big, but you can basically get 2 in. You can kind of see that. And then finally, insulin vials or vials. So there's the pen. That's the insulin pen. So you can see that doesn't usually take up too much space. So depending on whether you want to pack that pen or it's not yet charged. And then here you kind of see a couple of the vials. So you can really only fit 2 vials per level, which is a shame. They optimized the geometry just a little bit better, maybe made it a little bit more circular. You might have been able to get 3 per level, so that's kind of a shame, given that this is listed as for insulin, but they did say it's for pens. But anyway, just with a slight optimization of that container geometry there, you would have probably been able to get 3 additional vials, but it is what it is. So if you were counting there, that was 6 vials. And interestingly enough, you can shimmy a pen in if you're sort of, careful. There's just enough space to create a column there for a pen, but that takes a little bit of wrangling. So in practice, though, I mean, if you are actually wrestling the fact that you need to keep all your stuff cool, messing around like this is kind of clunky. Your product's going to start heating up basically. But I guess practice makes perfect. So there you go. You can kind of see. Now I have 6 vials and 1 pen sitting in there. All right, so let's keep on going here. So there you can kind of see the vials. All right, and then let's have a look at the carrier bag. So the carrier bag's surprisingly elegant compared to some of the other attempts at carrier bags that I've seen, kind of very cheap ones. So this is actually surprisingly elegant. It's custom. It seems to be made for this product. It has an area here for the display panel, and it has a mesh on the side that's positioned for the vents of the cooler. One interesting thing is the rear vent is now covered, so that's sort of blocked out. There was a vent there, but it's sort of been, I guess, taken out of the picture. And then on one side, there's a little hole for the port. And then the underside of the carrier bag also has a vent. So the way the air flows with this system is the air is sucked in or pulled in from the underneath. It blows through the cooling area and then vents out to the sides. So that's sort of mechanically or mechanistically how that works. Of course, there's no airflow within the cooler itself. The cooling fans are there to sort of blow the air off the Peltier cooling plate that's in the cooling engine. But you'll obviously want to be very careful if you place this on a carpet or something, because you'll inadvertently block the inlet of the cooling system. So just you'd want to really make sure that you're always sitting it on a solid surface that doesn't create a blockage, because it actually has 4 legs if you look at it carefully. Just flashing over some of the manual stuff that came with it. There was some cards that were inserted. It talked about charging for 8 hours before use, different things like that. It had sort of these customer service emails, different things. I'm not going to spend too much on these. I'm just going to show them, and you can pause the screen at any point in time if you want to study the information carefully. So I'm just going to flip through these, give it a few seconds for each, maybe 5. And here's another, and that's sort of the gist of the manual. And I'll now actually just bring your attention to some points of interest with the manual that caught my attention. So I'm actually really surprised that battery's claimed to be 20,000 milliamp hour. It's quite small, quite slim. Batteries, even some of the high-end batteries that I've seen that have 20,000 milliamp hour tend to require a much larger size for the lithium and cells and all that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, I'm a little suspicious of that. Also noted that it says it has an input voltage of 5 volts and it draws a power of 10 watts. Now, the one thing that I didn't like so much in the manual was this sort of disclaimer or statement here. So it says in a constant temperature state, when once reaching the set temperature, the device enters a constant temperature state with a deviation of approximately 5.4 Fahrenheit, or I guess 3 degrees centigrade. The other thing that it says is that the default setting is 41 Fahrenheit when you sort of first switch it off, and then you can of course dial in some more specific temperatures. But if you calculate that, if the default temperature is 41 and the deviation is 5.4, the upper extreme of that range is 46.4, which just falls outside the typical spec of medications, which is 36 to 46. So that's not necessarily a good statement to have in a manual if you are wanting a product that is designed for 36 to 46 Fahrenheit. Anyway, maybe they made a mistake here, I don't know. But we're going to take a look at the data and see what's going on with this. Alright, and then some thermal imaging just to see how it looks in terms of its structure. So it is a plastic container structure, and then it has this aluminium inner chamber, so a little bit different than our usual thermo flasks. So the upper level or the upper deck seems reasonably insulated, but you can kind of also see how hot the cooling area is at the base. So definitely that's pulling in some heat to do its work, or venting some heat, I should say. And then interestingly enough, the little for the container lid, at the very seam of the lid, there seemed to be a little bit of a leak of heat there at the front of the panel. Now, interestingly enough, that's where the battery sits, just on the other side of that. And so that was sort of interesting to see. I was sort of wondering, where does the heat from that battery go? Does it sort of dissipate uniformly? Does it try to make its way out of the top? I don't know. But anyway, you could sort of, I thought that was kind of interesting. You could see there was sort of kind of a little bit of a heat line there at the seam of the entrance of the container. And then the logo panel seemed to be emitting a little bit more heat as well. So I'm not sure if that logo panel perhaps actually is thinner behind. Maybe it's a thinner wall, and so that's perhaps how they try to design the feature to allow the heat to escape from the battery. So, but I'm not going to break it. I'm not going to break into that the panel that has the letters safety on it to see what's behind. But behind that panel, basically, that's where the battery sits. So anyway, interesting to see this. A couple more thermals. So here you can kind of see the backside. You know, nothing too eventful here. Just interesting to kind of see. You got the rainbow thermals, the ironbow thermals. There's different names for different thermal views if you're into that stuff. And then the smaller picture there shows the live picture of the actual product that was taken at the same time as the thermal, so you can sort of orientate yourself. Now in this visual here, I inverted the unit, so the base is actually is now sitting up, and I just wanted to take a closer look at that underside to see how that grid looked and how hot it was. And then also, while I was at it, I took some pictures of the battery while it was outside the unit and charging to see what was going on there. And interestingly enough, part of the battery gets very, very hot and warm when it's charging, and so that's sort of interesting to see. And so I'm sort of now wondering what the effect of that heat would be if you have, say, gone on a flight for a couple of hours. You're then in an airport, you're doing a layover, you plug it into a wall, the unit's powering, and then the battery's charging. That's quite an impressive amount of heat there that's being produced by a battery that's very close to the cooling chamber. So that's kind of interesting. And here you can here's a close-up of that the underside of the unit. So now you can see the little legs. There's four legs, and then there's this grill. The red thing here is this the marker from my thermal imaging camera to mark a temperature. Actually, you can kind of see here it's it marked 83 Fahrenheit at that position there. So it's on the hotter side. So kind of interesting to sort of have a look at that. This is the inlet. So the air flows in through the underside and then blows out of the side. So then I wanted to sort of see how this unit would look under thermal when you have the bag on it, the carrier bag. So the carrier bag's pretty snug fit over this cooler. You actually have to unplug the power cable in order to add the carrier bag. So that is maybe not the most elegant design feature. It's a shame that you have to remove the cable in order to add the carrier bag. And then the carrier bag has this sort of mesh where the vent grills are located. I think that's interesting. I would probably have not put that structure there in the spirit of wanting maximal venting of the hot air versus having a grill structure where the cooler is and now this mesh structure where the bag is. All of these things are sort of going to work against you in terms of absorbing heat or kind of slowing down the airflow from the cooling fans and stuff. So aesthetically it looks kind of cool, but I think thermodynamically that may or may not be a problem. And then also the grills are plastic and stuff. So here you can kind of see, and actually in fact to my suspicion, look how hot the carrier bag mesh gets when it's in position and the unit is active. So it's, so that sort of mesh is definitely getting warm, heating up, perhaps somewhat interfering with the flow of the air. I don't know, but anyway, it's kind of interesting to see that. That could be sort of a design consideration or a test consideration. I could see myself actually just cutting out that mesh piece so that the airflow from the cooling vents are is optimal. Interesting. And next, so decibels. So if you recall, the advert said that it was a whisper quiet 23. I put some decibel meters right next to it, and then also a little bit further along, sort of bedside distance. And actually, this is quite a loud unit. It was hovering in the 55 to 56 decibel range. And if you know from all of my other videos where I've brought out the decibel meter, some of them are some of the other products that are out there hover in the 30 to 40 decibel range. Most of them hover in the 40 to 50 decibel range, and maybe the loudest one that I know of is the Chi that was in the 50 to 55 decibel range at this position. So actually, this one is the grand winner at this point. This one, I would say, is the loudest of the units that I've tested with a decibel meter at those distance positions. So I highly doubt that this can be claimed to be whisper quiet with 23 decibels. And actually, by the way, 23 decibels is quite hard to measure, because when you're hovering down in the 30 decibel range, you're actually just basically in background noise, I think, at that point. So anyway, I think you need quite interesting equipment to get down to that level. So let's keep on going. This is a video of that. So now you can sort of hear the sound of this product. So one interesting thing is you're probably used to coolers that use oscillation Peltier plates. So they cycle on and off as they cool, they pause, they warm up a little bit, they turn back on. So they sort of have an oscillation where you hear the fan running every few minutes or something like that. This unit actually, intriguingly, uses a continuous cooling approach. So it's continuously cooling. There's no oscillation or cycle. It just continuously runs. So that noise there is constant and continuous. So that's sort of interesting to sort of think about. When I saw that, when I realized that that's how this unit worked, what I translated that into is that this is going to consume batteries quite quickly, because one of the tricks with the oscillation cooling is that the on and off will basically you'll have a little bit of a tug of war between cooling and the amount of power that you burn from your battery. So yeah, interesting approach to the design. They probably did it like that because the position of having a Peltier plate at the base of a cooler is, in my view, very inefficient, because if you think about it, heat's trying to rise and you're now trying to cool from the base an entire unit of which the heat is trying to rise. If you think about the typical USB cooler, the cooling engine is sitting on the top, so it's pulling the heat up as it's rising. It's really sort of cooling that system. So here you're sort of fighting against the, let's call it the logic of how heat works and how heat flows. So I can see why they made it a continuous cooling engine, because they're probably having to work quite hard to keep this thing actually cool. Anyway, I don't know. Interesting to sort of think about, but I'll show you the results soon. Here's the power pack. So you can kind of see that although the battery is from China and this is a newer product, it actually unfortunately doesn't have the CCC certification. So that could be a plus or a negative. Some of the newer China import products that I'm aware of, all of the batteries that they have CCC certification. So yeah, we shall see what that means. But also here you can see the mark here. It says rated capacity 12,000 milliamps at 5 volts, and then it says capacity 20,000 milliamps at 77. So this is sort of interesting. I was trying to figure out what they were trying to do here, but I think what they're actually trying to say is that this battery really only has a 12,000 milliamp hour capacity, but somehow there's some kind of clever calculation tricks to lift that up to 20,000 milliamp hour based on how you do your calculation. So yeah, that's kind of sneaky. But this actually makes sense because I was very suspicious that this thing had 20,000 milliamp hours of actual battery capacity. So, all right, let's keep on going. Enough about that. And so just some extra goodies here. So I wanted to just have a quick look to see. So first of all, when you're plugging an external battery power pack, one of my favorite, the Inu, I wanted to see how much voltage and power that draws during cooling. So with a power pack, this unit was pulling in 4.9 volts and 1.67 amps. That was quite interesting. But intriguingly, when you plug it into the wall, so over here, this setup here, this circuitry here is the wall circuitry. Actually, the unit pulls 5.33 volts and 2.62 amps. This is quite a punch compared to some of the other coolers and systems that we have. This is definitely pulling in, or trying to pull in, quite a bit of power. I'm intrigued as to why it will pull in this amount when plugged in versus this amount when on a battery pack. It seems like the electrical system somewhat tames itself when it knows or detects that it's in battery or power bank mode. Not 100% sure, but anyway, here's the data. But this is interesting though. 5.33. To give you an example, I think the other coolers were probably in the 5.1, 5.2 range, and then certainly the ampage draws were kind of more down in the ones than actually 2.6. So anyway, interesting. This one seems to need quite a bit of juice to run. So yeah, we're now getting to my usual money shot of the presentation, so the temperature profile. So my usual setup using calibrated switchbot temperature probes. I've got one in the upper position, one in the lower position, the probe pointing up or the probe pointing down to measure the rough approximate temperature of the upper section of the container or the lower section closer to the cooler. Because the dummy Z-bound pens didn't work, I actually removed the caps on the test pens so that they could fit in. But just a heads up, the caps are removed for this test. But anyway, that's the basic setup. And now let me show you some of the data. So as always, a very rich data set with I think 2 to 3 days of data, continuous data here. So I'll sort of walk you through the story. There are 2 ambient profiles. The first one is, let's call it the lower ambient conditions. So it was hovering at the 70s down to the 60s. And then I have an sort of an upper condition ambient profile. So this was hovering more in the upper 70s, skirting on the 80s and so on. These are just different rooms that I have in my house. And so they're quite handy for just doing some kind of quick peek at the effect of ambient temperature. Being in California, you get kind of a warmer ambient setup without needing to do heat chambers and all of that. So for the initial part of the testing, the ambient condition was the lower condition. And then towards the end of the test, I moved the unit into the warmer spot, and just to see how good it would perform. In terms of the journey, so first of all, turn it on, set the panel to 36. You can see the 2 temperature profiles, the purple. So the lower deck, the lower container, went down to about 36, which was nice to see. But unfortunately, the upper deck was about 6-7 degrees Fahrenheit higher. So that was sort of hovering in the I don't know, let's call it sort of the 40, 41, 42 mark. When you put the panel to 41 Fahrenheit, the base, the lower section hovered around about that. But now here you can see that the upper section actually went past the 46 Fahrenheit mark, and so this sort of this temperature gradient between the lower and the upper section is quite substantial. And so to use a product like this, you're going to really have to keep the panel temperature really set down to the bottom, so 36, so that you can actually have the right temperature in the system. And then when you set the panel to 46 Fahrenheit, you can kind of see here now that it's basically game over with the upper section. It's now hovering in the 50 plus Fahrenheit range. So to my suspicion, as I said, the design, the cooler designs where they use the cooling engine at the base always has this problem of temperature gradient between the lower and the upper section, and they always really struggle to keep the upper part cool. And yet again, here is another product that has that problem, unfortunately. Then the battery test. So basically set the panel down to 36 Fahrenheit again to kind of give it a good test run. and basically the battery lasted exactly 7 hours and 4 minutes from start to being fully drained. This little blip in the middle was, I was just doing some electrical tests with switching between battery and the mains and different things like that, so you can sort of just make a note of that, but ignore that. It's just an artifact of my electrical tests. And then finally, test restart. So after it warmed up a little bit, I then set the panel back to 36, and I actually placed the drained battery inside the unit and plugged it in and tried to cool it down. And interestingly enough, what I noticed was the unit seemed to struggle between powering the cooler versus actually trying to charge the battery. And you can sort of see that in the temperature profile, where if you go back to the beginning here, look how quickly the unit cooled down. By the way, make note, this was not 15 minutes. This actually took a good hour and a bit to sort of do that. So that advertisement part is a new goo. But look at the situation here, how when the battery's drained, it actually was really struggling to actually even cool down, as it was sort of fighting what to do with the power. And then what happened here was I removed the battery from the unit and then separately used that separate plug to actually start charging it. And the moment that I did that, you could see that then allowed the unit to start to really cool down to those lower temperatures. So I think this is kind of a tricky situation, because you're going to want to be able to travel on a plane, go through periods where you're on just the battery, but then if you have to plug in somewhere and the unit is actually struggling to even get below 46, you can kind of see, look at that, you can kind of see how it was struggling here to really get below the 46, especially with that upper section. Eventually it settles out. I gave it a little sort of pressure test during this phase of the product testing. And then finally over here, you know, letting it run again. There's a little typo here. This should be 36, not 46. Forgive me on that one. But the last bit here was just to sort of try out the ambient, the higher ambient temperature, and that by itself was not too bad. It was about the same. So it seemed to hold. It seemed to generally be okay with ambient temperatures from, you know, mid 60s to mid 80s overall. Not too much difference, but I think the real power struggle with this one was whether the battery was charged or not charged. That seemed to create a significant strain on this system. And then also the difference, the gradient between the lower section and the upper section of the container. This is pretty massive. This will be I think challenging to manage in terms of airports and maybe hotter climates and different things like that. So anyway, yeah, so that's kind of a quick version of this. I think you kind of get the gist of it, get the idea. So let's keep on going here. So now flashing back to some of the adverts, right? So, you know, it talked about being able to, it had, you know, could run for 8 hours. I'm going to give that a no. Mine came in at 7. I'm not sure what it meant by you could get an extra hour. If I draw you back to that graph, once the power was cut, it very quickly, you know, within basically 10 minutes, you were already back at 50 plus Fahrenheit. So not sure what that little statement there meant about you get an extra hour of passive temperature hold when the power is off. I guess it depends on what the threshold for that passive temperature is. Cooling down to 15 minutes. I think this is a yes and a no. It does cool faster when the battery's charged, but certainly it took way more than 15 minutes to get down to 36. TSA approved. Yeah, that's just a gimmick. TSA doesn't approve stuff. So yeah, so in terms of advertisement, I'm going to give most of this kind of a thumbs down. Also, real-time temperature monitoring. So the panel itself, I guess, is good in terms of the lower chamber, but obviously the panel is completely off in terms of the upper temperature, the upper chamber temperature. And then the panel itself is very, very sensitive to touch. And when I was playing around with walking with the bag, I actually inadvertently turned it off just from rubbing against my side. So that's an absolute design no-go there. They're going to need to either protect these buttons from inadvertently being activated or redesign them to be less touch sensitive. And so this is sort of just kind of a recap slide. I think I've covered most of this. So the lower section does do okay in terms of temperature conditions, but that's a really limited amount of space in terms of workable area for carrying drugs. There was the significant temperature gradient across the container itself. The 20,000 milliamp hour battery in 7 hours, well, it appears that actually that battery was 12,000 milliamp hours, but the claim was that it was 20,000, so pick your battles with that one. But in any case, the onboard battery basically lasts 7 hours, and I think the complication here is after the battery is drained, when you try and recharge it, the system seems to have some electrical issues in terms of being able to simultaneously manage the charging of the battery and also powering the unit. So that would be kind of a watch out. The carrier bag's elegant, but it's a shame you have to unplug the unit to actually put the carrier bag on or off. And actually, as I was playing around with it, the actual the mesh and the carrier bag itself, when you do put it on, it appears to lift the temperature, the core temperature of the unit by about 1 or 2 Fahrenheit. So I think that's some combination of just it sort of negatively affects the vents, and also perhaps it adds a little bit of insulation to the overall system, of which there is a battery in the middle of that's trying to cool, that has quite a bit of capacity. So sort of design stuff to think about there. That might need to be rethought. And as I said, the panel button is too sensitive. You can really just accidentally nudge it. And so I'm going to call this an earlier Gen 1 design. I think that it needs a lot of work, frankly. I would not use this for travel purposes. It's kind of interesting. It's got a lot of good ideas. I like the elegance of how it looks. The shape's kind of intriguing. It's not optimal. I think packing-wise, you could have made it a slightly more curved container. You could have been able to fit a little bit more in there and stuff. So anyway, just stuff to think about. So that's sort of a wrap on the product. And so yeah, there's nothing else left for me to do than write this one off as defective. And unfortunately, this one's on its way to being returned. So this will not be going on a live journey, unfortunately. It's not reached my bar of expectations. And so, yeah, in wrapping up for today, just a few community notes. So by the way, please subscribe. Please take a moment to like the videos. I'm really trying to journey now towards taking the YouTube channel to the next level. All the stuff, all the content that I bring you is free. It's for the community. It's you. It does take a lot of work to put this together, so getting those likes and getting those subscribes, being able to lift this YouTube channel is gonna really help me in terms of being able to sort of grow this to the next level and bring you content. There's a lot of cool club community stuff as well. We have the Discord channel if you want to come and chat with fellow travelers, share ideas and stuff. That's in the early days, it's growing. And you may not even know this, but I am also quite active on Reddit. We have a community there, and actually I'm starting to think about posting technical articles around medicine, travel, cooling. So if you're more technical, you're interested in that stuff, that might be of interest to you. And then of course I'm also on X, formerly known as Twitter. I haven't quite decided where to go with the X platform, but anyway, it's kind of there. And yeah, last but not least, actually I was really surprised to receive some notes from subscribers around being interested in, hey, do you mind if I send you a little donation and stuff for your work? So if you're into that stuff, if you want to join the donations club and party, you're very welcome to do that. All I can say is all that stuff will get funneled into testing and more testing, and so every little helps, as you can see from this video. So finally, the grand finale, as always, I continue to be busy with the Cool Shop. So you can go to the website, you can take a look. I've got some really cool curated product that's all individually tested, very thoroughly tested for patient travel purposes. So if you're interested in X1s, X4s, X6s, X8s actually as well, G-tie ties, other stuff like that, I always have a very small and curated inventory of all of that cool stuff. So yeah, your call. And then of course all of this stuff gets the QC tested Sir Koolzalot seal of approval. Heads up, the eBay prices are all marked up just so that random buyers don't just grab stuff. This is more exclusive for patients, and so please connect with me first for the high quality and import prices. And on that note, that's all I have for today. So as I said, I am going to be traveling for the next few weeks, road trips, business trips, holidays, and so be patient if the next video's a few weeks away. I am there. I'm constantly active, thinking about the travel journeys, the cooling journeys, and you can always send me an email if you want to say hello. So on that note, have a fantastic week and talk to you again.